thy hand. So Satan went forth from the presence of the Lord. Look at chapter number 1. The Bible said, there came a messenger, verse 14, unto Job, saying, the oxen were plowing. The sandbeams fell upon them and took them away. They've slain the servants with the edge of the sword. While he was yet speaking, there came another, said, the fire of God's fallen from heaven, and have burned up the sheep. And I, only I, am escaped alone to tell thee. While he was yet speaking, there came also and said, the Chaldeans made thee out 3 bands, and fell upon the camels, and carried out away, and slain the servants with the edge of the sword. And while he was yet speaking, can it get worse? And while he was yet speaking, he said, thy sons and daughters were eating and drinking in their eldest brother's house. And there came a great wind from the wilderness, and smote the 4 corners of the house. And it fell upon the young men, and they're dead. Job, your sons and daughters are dead, all of them. The Bible said Job rose and rent his mantle, shaved his head, and fell on the ground. And he worshiped. He said, naked came I out of my mother's womb, naked shall I return hither. The Lord gave, the Lord's taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. And in all this Job sinned not, nor charged God foolishly. Boy, you know that ticked off Satan. That ticked him off. Amen. Satan goes before the Lord again, and God says, okay, you can have Job, you can have his body, but you can't take his life. Chapter 2, verse 5, but put forth thy hand now, and touch his bone and his flesh, and he will curse thee to thy face. The Lord said to Satan, behold, he's in thy hand, but save his life. Listen to this. So Satan went forth from the presence of the Lord, and smote Job with sore boils from the sole of his foot to his crown. Verse 8, and he took a potsherd, piece of pottery, piece of broken clay, to scrape himself withal. And he sat down among the ashes. Ashes of what? The ashes of the sacrifice that he made in chapter number 1 for his family. He went back to the same place where he'd met with God time and time again. And he sat down in the midst of the presence of God, where God had spoke to his heart. The Bible said, then his wife said to him, does thou still retain thy integrity? She said, why don't you just curse God and die? Who could blame her? She's lost everything, and now she's fixing to lose her husband. He said, thou speakest as one of the foolish women speaketh. What? Shall we receive good at the hand of the God, and not receive evil? And in all this Job sinned not with his lips. I'll tell you what else he didn't do. He didn't charge God foolishly. Skip over to chapter 42 real quick. Bible said, so verse 12, so the Lord blessed the latter end of Job more than his beginning. Think about that. God blessed the latter end more so than the beginning end. He ended up better off than he started. And this man lost everything. He lost his family. He lost his finances. He lost his flock. He lost his health. He was fixing to lose his wife. I'm telling you, Job lost everything. The Bible said, for he had 14,000 sheep. Chapter number 1, he had only 7,000, but chapter 42, he had 14. He had 6,000 camel in chapter number 42. In chapter 1, he had 3,000 camel. Chapter 42, he had 1,000 yoke of oxen, 1,000 donkeys. Chapter 1, he only had 500. Look at verse 13. This always amazed me. You say, well, why didn't God double his children? Why didn't God double his kids? Look, he had also 7 sons and 3 daughters. He did double them. He doubled every one of them. Because in chapter 1, he made sacrifice for his kids. That meant they went to heaven. had 7 sons on the other side, and he had 3 daughters on the other side, and God gave him 7 more sons on this side and 3 more daughters on this side. He doubled his kids. And after this, Job lived 140 years, and he saw his sons and his sons' sons, even 4 generations. Think about that. 4 generations come to see Pawpaw Job. Great Pawpaw Job. Great Pawpaw Job. Great Pawpaw Job. And they no doubt, I always wondered this, if maybe one time he might have had on an old short sleeve shirt sitting in his recliner, and his grandkids crawled up in his lap. Pawpaw, what's those scars on your arms? What's those scars on your head? What's those scars on your legs? What's those scars on your feet? His mind went back to when he sat down among the ashes and he was scraping those sore bowls to relieve himself of the pain. And he might have said something like this, "Hey kids, that was God proving that he was more than enough. Every scar represented on my body says, I've been through enough to know he'll be enough for me. And if he'll be enough for me, he'll be enough for you and your kids and your kids and your kids." And if you know anything about the Bible, Job is the oldest book chronologically. It's older than the book of Genesis. We've been talking about Job for over 6,000 years. How did he get from chapter 1 to chapter 42? It's found in Job 14. How in the world could he go from a horrible beginning to a great ending, and God doubled everything? When I say God doubled everything, his house was twice the size in 42 than it was in 1. Hey, in chapter number 1, he only had a single door to come in his house. In chapter 42, he had a double door. His refrigerator in chapter 1 was twice the size in chapter 42. How can you go from losing everything and being down at the bottom of the barrel and being down to nothing and get all the way to chapter 42 and God double everything you got, even your children? It's found in chapter number 14. Verse number 7. You ready? Job said, "For there is hope." There's hope of what, Job? There's hope of a tree. You know why we're anything this morning? Because of a tree. That's why we're here. It's a tree. The only reason I'm here, the only reason you're here is because of a tree. That's it. We would be nobodies going nowhere. I tell you what, we'd be on our way to hell with our back broke if it wasn't for that tree. Job said, all hell broke loose. My whole life was turned upside down. But there's hope of a tree. But it's more than just a tree. It's a tree that if it be cut down. Happiest day in your life is when you cut down a tree. Happiest day in your life is when you throw down the old rugged cross and say, I claim the Lord. I claim Jesus. I claim Him. Happiest day in your life is when that tree gets cut down. Because I'm going to tell you something. Without the death of Jesus Christ, without the death of the Son of God, we wouldn't be here today. But that tree was cut down. Job said this, and this is in the middle of the turmoil and the tragedy and the tears and the temptations. There's hope of a tree if it be cut down. Job said it will sprout again. What's he saying? He said they're going to cut down this tree. He's talking future tense now. They're going to cut down this tree, but they think it's cut down, but it's going to sprout again. Matter of fact, 72 hours later, early one Easter Sunday morning, that tree sprouted again. It's called Resurrection Sunday. It's called Easter morning, Easter Sunday. He said, there's hope of a tree. If it be cut down, it will sprout again. And I like this right here. And that the tender branch thereof will not cease. One more verse and I'll be done. One more. Isaiah 50. Is that right? Isaiah 53. Isaiah said, verse 1, who hath believed our report? To whom the arm of the Lord is revealed. Look at verse 2. Listen to this. Isaiah said this. Same thing Job said. Same thing Job said. Isn't it amazing how Job and Isaiah didn't miss a lick? For he shall grow up before him as a tender plant, as a root out of dry ground. For he hath nor form nor comeliness. And when we shall see him, there is no beauty that we should desire him. There he is. He's wounded for our transgression, bruised for our iniquities, chastisement of our peace laid upon him. With his stripes we're healed. He makes his grave with the wicked, verse 9, and with the rich in death, because he hath done no violence, neither was any deceit in his mouth. Yet it pleased the Lord to bruise him and put him to grief. You ready? Job said, if there's hope of a tree, if it be cut down, it will sprout again, and the tender branch thereof will not cease. Listen to this. And will not cease. Isaiah 53, verse 12. Bible said, therefore will I divide him a portion with the great, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong, because he hath poured out his soul unto death. Listen, and he was numbered with the transgressors, and he bare the sin of many, and he is making intercession for the transgressors. Can I tell you something? He's alive this morning. He's alive and well. He's not dead. He's not on the cross. He's not in the tomb. He's sitting at the right hand of the Father, and he's making intercession for me and for you and for any other transgressor that needs him. Job said there's hope of a tree. How can you go from chapter 1 to chapter 42? I'll tell you how you can do it. Through a tree. If we were to drag Job out of heaven this morning and let him testify at Leatherwood Baptist Church, you know what he'd say? He'd say something like this. I've been through enough to know he'll be enough for you. I was talking with Miss Ann on the phone. She encouraged my heart when she's had them old shingles. You know what she told me? I'm going to share this. This is good. She said, Brother Adam, all I'm doing is praying. She said, I'm doing my part so God can do his part. That's it. That's it. I'm doing my part. That way God do his part. No, you can't heal yourself. No, you can't make yourself better. No, you can't get yourself up out of a horrible situation. But I know a man who can. I know his name's Jesus. You say, how in the world can you go out here in this world? How in the world can you walk through valleys and go through trials and go through temptation and storms and struggles and strife? How can you come out on the other side and be better off in the end than you were in the beginning? Because there's hope of a tree. It's him. It's him. Paul said, for I'm crucified with Christ. Nevertheless I live, yet not I, but Christ liveth in me. And the life that I now live in the flesh, I live by the faith of the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. Paul said, I am what I am by the grace of God. I'm going to sing that song one more time this morning. Let's stand together. I know I've been through enough. I know I've been through enough. You've been through enough. We've all been through enough to know one thing. He'll be enough for us.